سخنران بعدی ما آقای حسین علیزاده هستند. ایشون مسئول برنامه خاورمیانه و شمال آفریقای کمیسیون بین‌المللی حقوق بشر زنان و مردان همجنسگرا هستند و در رابطه با قوانین و عملکردهای ضد دگرباشان جنسی فرای قانون لواط صحبت می‌کنند. بفرمایید.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I just want to briefly talk about the broader view that exists in Iran and just set the stage in terms of understanding what it means to be gay or lesbian or transgender, a white person in the Islamic Republic of Iran. Rose made an amazing job in terms of describing the details of the categories of rights violations, but I think that it is very important to keep in mind that the Iranian government still, when they talk about the LGBT rights in Iran, refuses to basically acknowledge the systematic rights violations despite abundance of evidence that exists in Iran. The latest basically comment that we have from Iran's officials on this issue is a statement by the head of the judiciary, Ayatollah Amoli. It was on February 18th. He basically commented on human rights situation in Iran in a broad term, and specifically said that they constantly accused us of killing homosexuals. No such a thing's ever happened in Iran. So basically denying the fact that there are laws in the country, in the new penal code that was passed and ratified in 2013, that very clearly says that the punishment for two consenting adult males that engage in same-sex relations is death. He never commented on other categories of right violations that Rose pointed out to, but it is also important to keep in mind that it's not only the sodomy law that exists in Iran and punishes same-sex relations between two men, but there are a whole host of laws and regulations that makes it very difficult for individuals who are either exploring their identities and sexuality or are even debating issues related to sexual orientation and gender identity to basically go further. I try to give a few examples to make it vivid and real for you in terms of what it means for a person to be in Iran. In 2013, a booklet was published by the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights. It was called Free and Equal. It's part of the Free and Equal campaign. So this booklet, Born Free and Equal, is available in the 5 official languages at the UN. And Eagleherk also worked with the UN Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights to translate the document into Persian. The translation became available and we published printed copies of that. They're not allowed to distribute a UN document inside Iran. You can get arrested for a book that is published by the UN because it talks about sexual rights. Just to give you an idea in terms of what it means for individuals. This has nothing to do with your sexual behavior, with your sexual orientation or gender identity. It has to do with having a discussion about the international treaties that Iran is a signatory to, and individuals just want to discuss this. Over the past few years, we have seen cases of newspapers shut down. The latest example of which happened in August. A newspaper by the name of Qanun, which ironically in Persian means law, published a short satirical about homosexuality. Immediately, the general prosecutor in Tehran ordered the newspaper to shut down. They closed down the newspaper for 3 months, and it was only after a lengthy legal process and paying $1,500 fine that they were allowed to republish the newspaper. It's just one reference to homosexuality, just to give you an idea. We have had also examples of university professors, a sociology professor in Tehran who talked to students about sexual orientation and gender identity and discussed homosexuality in a rather balanced tone. She was fired from the university, and the university president confirmed that in an interview with the press, that this person was fired because she was talking about homosexuality. In his explanation, he said it was an encouraging way, actually encouraging people to become gay, which was not the case. This professor, we later found out, was a professor of medical sociology, and in her class she was obviously talking about different orientations and also gender identity. Another issue that Rose pointed out, and it's very important to keep in mind in terms of transgender rights in Iran. Iran has a very peculiar system. Basically, Iran does not recognize gender identity. As far as the Iranian officials are concerned, there is no such a thing as gender identity or sexual orientation for that matter. The law of Iran only recognizes sexual relations between two people, a man and a woman, who are married in accordance with the law. Anything else is considered to be illegal. Also, you are only a man or a woman, so there is no gender identity that is extra. In case of transgender individuals, what happens is that they are diagnosed with a form of mental sickness. And that is why the Iranian government allows individuals who are basically applying for sex reassignment surgery to go through a lengthy psychological evaluation. At the end of the evaluation, if they are indeed confirmed by a panel of experts and medical doctors that these people are transgender, then they would issue a license that allowed them to undergo sex reassignment surgery. Now, if you are a transgender individual and do not wish to undergo sex reassignment surgery, basically you have no rights. And for those transgender individuals, it is very interesting that you only can get a state ID at the end of the surgery. That does not guarantee the social recognition. The issue still is the broad discrimination and even lack of recognition by government agencies when it comes to sex reassignment surgery. In our documentation, we had one case that in the city of Tabriz that told us that she was arrested by the police. Tabriz is the third or the fourth biggest city in Iran, so it's not a small village in the middle of nowhere. She was arrested for cross-dressing, and she went to the judge and during the court and said, well, I have a situation. She was trying to explain that she's transgender, and as such she is eligible for cross-dressing and actually sex reassignment surgery. What they did told her was that we know you have a situation, and your situation can be remedied by a few lashes. So they lashed her and then sent her back home. Just to prove a point, she later went to Tehran to apply for sex reassignment surgery, went through the process, got the court order, went back to Tabriz to show this to the court officials in Tabriz, and they start laughing at her that, did you print this in your basement? Well, what is this? We don't know if such a thing is even legal. So there's a great deal of misinformation when it comes to basically the rights of transgender individuals. Harassment is abundant. A lot of transgender individuals who leave Iran at the end of the surgery tell us that the situation was simply unbearable. The sexual harassment that they received from basically colleagues, the families decide to disown them because they feel that they are no longer considered to be a normal being, and also there is a great deal of discrimination at work. So all those categories of basically right violations that the state does not respond to amount to in very unbearable circumstances under which individuals have no right but to basically leave the country or commit suicide, which is also another part of the reality of being a member of the LGBT community in Iran. Another issue that I want to highlight, and it would have been ironic if not, it wasn't as grave and sad as it is this discriminatory nature of the penal code in Iran. When you read the new penal code that was passed by the Islamic Parliament and the Constitutional Council ratified it in 2013, they come up with different categories of liabilities and rights for individuals who are engaged in same-sex practices. So basically, this is how it goes. Depending on whether you are a woman or you are a man, the punishment for you varies. Also, depending on whether you are Muslim or non-Muslim, your punishment is different. If you are a Muslim having sex with a non-Muslim, the non-Muslim guy assumes to be the seducer and therefore faces death penalty. Depending also on your sexual position, if you are a sodomizer or the sodomized, this is the official language that they use, the punishment is different. The legal system is supposed to treat everybody equally. That's not the case in Iran. Even when it comes to punitive measures, it all depends on who you are and where you come from and what your religion is and what your marital status. That's the other category. If you are married, the punishment is more severe than when you're not married. Because the assumption is that if you are married, you have access to normal, quote-unquote, heterosexual relations, and then you choose to be homosexual, so the punishment is even more severe. Also, in the new penal code, they created a new category that is practically unheard of anywhere else on the planet, and that is homosexuality in cases other than same-sex relations, and then say such as holding hands, kissing, etc. This etc. is extremely important because even without having that etc. in the law, the lawyers always had this, the judges always had this power to use what is known in the Iranian penal system as the knowledge of the judge to fill in the gap. Meaning that if you don't have enough evidence to basically convict two individuals of committing same-sex relations, the judge always can say, fine, but based on my personal knowledge, I feel that you really did sleep with each other, therefore I think you are guilty. This is within the Iranian legal system. The knowledge of the judge is a principle in the new legal system and the old legal system. Now, that was not enough for the people to go after individuals. The new system says that in cases such as holding hand, kissing, etc., so anything and everything in the new legal system can be interpreted as the proof of your sexual orientation, basically, as a proof of homosexuality. They actually use the word homosexuality for the first time in the legal system, which basically is very interesting because it definitely demonstrates that now the legal system has more ways to go after individuals for punishment. The other issue that I want to mention, and that's extremely important, is that the Iranian legal system is extremely closed. It is next to impossible to basically find out the exact charges of individuals and know what the real cause of these convictions are. Often what we have seen is that individuals are charged with other charges than homosexuality. It's either rape or basically committing other crimes such as burglary or thief, and then they're bundled together and then they're presented as the evidence to the court. And obviously the court never basically is transparent about what exactly happened. It is very interesting because in my work as the regional coordinator for the Middle East and North Africa, I also work in the neighboring countries. Just 3 days ago, I saw a new document released by the Islamic State militias, ISIS. This is the first time that I've seen ISIS court orders actually published for public viewing. So far they have killed 14 people on charges of same-sex relations. This is the first time that they published a court order. But my point is that at least ISIS, shares the information with the public. So this is the exact charges, and that's why we're killing you. It's extremely problematic. The court is not internationally recognized, basically, but at least they show you the process and what the decision was. No such a luck in Iran. You do not have access to basically the lawyers. You do not have access to the court records. You do not have access to nothing, basically. So that makes it extremely difficult for human rights defenders to verify the government version of the story, whether those individuals were engaged in consensual sex or forced sexual relations. Another part that I want to mention, and that would be my last point so that we allow for other speakers to talk, is that the Iranian legal system also has a new innovation. It's the latest iteration of the penal code. It basically allows the court to convict a person who is involved in sexual relations with another man but is a victim of rape to be executed. It's something that never happened in the past, right? So if the way that the Iranian legal system works is that within the new penal code, you have 3 categories of sodomy. One is called lavaط, which is, and I apologize in advance for this very graphic language, but this is the exact language, the lexicon that's used by the court system in Iran. One category is basically penetrative sex between 2 men. It's called lavaط. Then the second category is called tafkhiz, which is non-penetrative sex between 2 men. And the third category is homosexuality in a very broad sense. The second category, tafkhiz, which is a non-penetrative anal sex between 2 men, is the category where if 2 individuals are caught, having that, then the punishment is death, regardless of whether this was consensual or it was basically a case of rape, which is extremely troubling and curious even by their own standards. Thank you so much.
خیلی متشکریم از آقای علیزاده برای سخنرانی بسیار جالبشون.